I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years, a great American, in whose symbolic shadows we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flame of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of Negroes is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of democratization. 100 years later, the Negro lives and languish in the corners of America's society and find himself an exile in his own land. And so, we've come here today to dramatize and shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check with the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. They were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall here. This is not was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed that unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note, and so far as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity with this nation. And so, we've come to cash this check. A check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have all come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is not time to engage the luxury of cooling off or take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make the real promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolated valley of segregation to the sunlit path of the racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all God's children. It would be fatal for the nations to overlook the urgency of the moment. This weltering summer of the Negroes' legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of the freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hope that the Negro needed to blow of steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening. If the nation returns to business as usual, and there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship's rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to the people who stand on the warm thresholds will lead in the palace of the justice. In the process of gaining our rights place, we must not be guilty of wrongly deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our third freedom for drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests degenerated into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust of our white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And then they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as I walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights when will be satisfied. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the clients. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from the smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed our dignity by stating, for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, no, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters, like righteousness, like mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of the great trials and tribulation. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail of cells, and some of you have come from the areas where your quest from freedom, left your battered by the storm of persecution, and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow these situations can be charged. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends. And so even though we face the difficulties of today's and tomorrow's, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the America dream. I have a dream that one day these nations will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day of the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slaves owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they'll not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their characters. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down Alabama, with its vicious raciest, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition, and nullification. One day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with the little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all the flesh shall sit in together. This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the south with. With this faith, we will able to have out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the judging disgust of our nations into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day. This will be the day when all God's children will able to sing with a new meaning. My countries of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I see. Land with my fathers died, land of the pluralism pride. From every mountain, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the courageous slopes of California. But not only that. Let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, we will let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city. We will be able to speed up that day with all God's children, backward and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics. We will be able to join hands, sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.